Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Forging Brains podcast. My name is Riley Kirkpatrick, and I got my co-host here, Gavin Cooper. Today, we got a cool guest. We got John McNerney with us. John is a farrier, a toolmaker, and he was in the law enforcement world, too, for a while. So I'm pretty interested to get to pick John's brain a little bit and get to know him a little better. Thanks for joining us today, John.
You bet, guys. I'm excited to be here. I'd listen to your podcast and love it. So I was looking forward to this. It'd be fun.
So otherwise known as
we
Yukon Forge.
appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah. I got the nickname Yukon, and then it just stuck. So I just kept that with the business.
Where did you get the nickname Yukon?
Well, so I grew up in Fairbanks. My dad was in the Air Force, and we moved around a bunch, but we ended up doing 2 tours in Fairbanks, Alaska, and basically from 4th grade through high school, I basically grew up in Alaska. And then when I came down into lower 48, as you call it, and started my shoeing career, I was working with Jim Quick, and then in the springtime, I showed up to a shop, and we were having like a spring blizzard. We get those pretty late in the or early in the spring, and you'll get these nasty blizzards, big whiteouts and stuff. Well, growing up in Alaska, I've driven in the snow. It's not a big deal, and I was hell-bent never to miss a day of work or miss an opportunity or anything like that. So I showed up on this blizzard, walked into a shop, and Quick's got a habit, he gets up early, gets in the shop, and either makes tools or shoes or whatever, but he's in the shop, and you can always meet him in the shop in the morning. So I walked in, and Quick looked up, looked a little bit surprised, and he goes, "All right, Yukon, let's go." That was it. I was Yukon after that. So
that's perfect. That's a good one,
right? So
he doesn't throw good names around too often, so that's a honor there.
Yeah. At the time, I was in good graces, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So you're in Colorado then now, huh?
Yeah. So I went to horseshoeing school in Colorado. Met my wife in Colorado, settled down here, and we've just made our life here.
So did you have horses or anything when you were growing up in Alaska?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So when we were in the Air Force, I really got into horses when I was in like 3rd grade. I thought horses was the coolest thing. We were living in Virginia, and I got my first riding lessons and stuff in Virginia. And then when I was in Alaska, we still had horses and did our horse things. And then after I graduated, I grew up with horses, and I wanted to go work in the horse industry. So I went down and was a groom, rode horses, did things like that in the Washington area, and starved to death. Basically, I was trying to do the horse riding training thing and groom and everything that you could possibly do. And I watched these horseshoers come in, and they would shoe a horse, get paid well, and they'd leave. And the hardest time they had with these horseshoers was getting them to show up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Busy. So I'm like, man, if you just showed up, you could probably be successful. So that's how I got into horseshoeing.
Do you remember what part of Washington it was?
Oh, yeah. So I lived in Gig Harbor, Tacoma, Concrete, all over Washington, just different places.
Yes, that's
Gig Harbor,
close to right around where I'm at.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
okay,
west side.
Cool. Yeah, what was that little town by? I can't remember the little town, but it was this big race barn. It's like under the shadow of
Emerald Downs.
No, I don't know if that's it, but I remember the gal that owned it. Her name was Gwen Blake. She was a big dressage rider or something. But they had a racehorse barn and stuff. But that wasn't in Gig Harbor. That was is it Concrete? That's right underneath the mountain there. I can't remember the town. It was a long time ago. God, that was back in 93, 94.
Oh, I was just being born.
I was in Washington for quite a while. Right. So I was trying to make my way in life type of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
But yeah, I did that for a while, and then decided to go in horseshoeing school and had an opportunity to go to Colorado, Fort Collins, and then I moved out to Colorado. and then there was a horseshoeing school at CSU, and I ended up going there, and that's how I got into really got into horseshoeing.
Is that like Colorado
And had you done
State University?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Had you done any farrier work before that, or just saw the other farriers working?
Well, so there was a dude that let me ride with him a couple of times, and probably did 2 or 3 ride-alongs with him. I shod my first horse with him, and then we were like, all right, we're moving to Colorado, and we just took off.
Got out of there. Man. So you went to school. How long was the program at school?
So CSU had a 1-year course. It was like, they called it a short course, but it was 12 months. Doug Butler had started it, and then he had left CSU, and they had a gentleman by the name of Steve Moline, who was running the school there. When I joined, there was 2 or 3 other people, and then it was I picked it because it was like a whole year, and I figured, and CSU had a ton of horses, so they had brood mares, they had a whole breeding thing going on, they had sport horses, they had polo team, they had all kinds of Western stuff going on, they had the 4/6 colts, and there was just a ton of horses, and there was only, I figured there was this instructor, 3 other students, and myself, and I figured I'll get under a lot of horses, and my thought was probably a good idea to do that.
Yeah. Hold up real quick. Gavin,
Thinking
yours
about
is still
switching.
Yeah. You're still just like all speckly and delayed. Like,
I'm gonna switch my hotspot.
John's is fast, and mine seems okay up to beat.
Yeah, Riley, you're pretty clear. You're keeping along real good.
Yeah, yours is good too. You could tell Gavin's just like a touch behind on the deal.
How is it now?
We'll get him.
Yeah, that's a little better.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, you're good now. Oh,
Okay.
now you're behind. Oh, there you go. I don't know.
Yeah, it's always hard.
Golly, I hate it when shit like that happens.
Are you hearing us? Do you think quick? Like it's not dropping you behind?
Oh no, I can hear you guys fine. It's just the visual, and which is
It's
no
just
problem.
Gavin's. Gavin, you're hearing it in real time now?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you guys perfectly fine.
Yeah,
Cool.
and you're answering us right away now, way quicker than before. Sweet. All right, so you went to school to the CSU, and they had a ton of horses. Like, did that mean they put you guys under a bunch of these horses?
Oh yeah.
Especially since there wasn't a lot of students.
Yeah, and like shortly after I jumped on, the other guys quit.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so it was me and the instructor for I think it was 3 to 6 months. It was 6 months. So it's just the two of us, and I think they probably had 200-300 horses at CSU that we had
No
to do.
way.
Yeah,
Between
just threw
two
me under the bus.
And you guys had that was probably a part of the contract of the shoeing school being there, is that they had to do the work on these horses, huh?
Yep, that was part of it. I felt bad for the instructor because they just used and abused the guy and barely paid him. But that was part of it, and I was excited because I was like, I want to be under every horse. I didn't care how many horses we did or whatever. I was hungry, and so it was cool for me.
Damn.
Yeah, but for that guy too, he was like, did you ever feel like the learning was taking second string, and you guys were just like, it was work time, like it wasn't time to be, he didn't have a lot of time to teach you anything because he had to just be on it.
Yeah, it was, I would say looking back on it, it was just, but it was hands-on, right? And so the book work and stuff was a little lax at the first part. But he did a really good job trying to fit that in, and I was hungry, so he told me, he's like, hey, do this homework and read these, and I would read it. I would just go home and I would do my homework, and then I would come back and we'd shoe horses like crazy, and then I would do homework. And then after the 6 months, we had other students that came in, and so that slowed us down a little bit, and we were able to do a ton of book work. So then I had the 6 months afterward to be able to study and pass the exams and stuff like that. So it worked out really good.
I was gonna say, do you feel like that helped you because you had such a you already had been around horses and everything, but now you had some working knowledge as a farrier.
Right, and that was it. So I had how people get in that aren't horse people, and they don't have any horsemanship, and they get beat up bad.
Oh yeah,
That was me at the beginning. Essentially,
I had the horsemanship down, or I had a good start anyway, and then I had to figure out the feet, right? And so that's really what I was focused on, and so that was really helpful.
So did it end up being a 2-year
That's so
program?
crazy that
No, it stayed 1 year for me, and then I think it always was a 1-year program, which at the time, and I didn't know Walla Walla was, I think I heard that was a 2-year program or something like that, but CSU stayed the 1 year, and it was just 1 year for me.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Did you guys do a bunch of forging throughout the program?
Yeah. Yep. So that's where I was really fortunate. So Steve was part of the RMFA and was active in the RMFA. I think I don't know if he was ever the president, but he had been part of the contest, and he knew about the AFA, and he pushed me straight into it. So I got to work with Quick 6 months into school. I got put into the clinics right away, and they said, "Hey, dude, the AFA is for you. You need to, get certified." And in my mindset was, I'm going to be the best horseshoer I could be. So my thought was all right, I'll go through school, and then I'll go apprentice, and then I want to go do different places to go learn to be the best horseshoer. And when I learned that the AFA was open for me, man, I just jumped on it.
That's cool. You had that mindset from the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that a mindset you always had before, or was it just was shoeing the first thing that lit that?
Oh no, I'm so competitive. If anything I do, man, I'm going to be the best I can be at whatever. It's it doesn't matter really what it is, but when I decided I was going to be a horseshoer, I'm by golly, I'm going to be the best horseshoer, and whatever path I can do to do this. But when I was doing horses, I was I'm going to be on the Olympics, I'm going to do this. But so I just pick whatever I pick, I'm just competitive, right? I'm going to beat you,
Yeah. No, I think that's most of the people we end up talking to on here. That's why we end up talking to. It's like-minded people, we just like to win a little bit, or at least try our hardest to get there. It's a good place to be. It's obviously it worked to your advantage, and people saw that in you.
Yeah, it was a huge advantage because I went from horseshoeing school to the certified test to going directly into contest. Competitions. I met up with people right away that were into learning and competing. So I ended up riding with Jim Quick. That was right off the bat, and the guy was just a wealth of knowledge. The other guys around here were all super positive on learning and building, and it was that was the first door that opened up, and I was lucky.
I don't know if it was lucky, right? You were showing initiative, so people were man, if you're trying, they're gonna try for you. And I think that's a good thing. It's it was probably easier for you to stay with your foot on the gas than to take a break after school or something.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So it was cool because it opened up school. You go through school, right, and then you're all right, what's next? But I already had the next thing in front of me. I already knew Jim Quick, who was on the American Farriers team, and I already knew that there's a whole world out there. And I was I want to be a part of it. Yeah,
that's it. So did you take your certification, try for your CF while you were in school, or just shortly after?
Almost right at the end.
Okay.
So a couple months, I took my CF. I almost got it. I had a couple things I had to fix, and so I ended up going to Arizona, and then there was a test a couple months after that, and I took my CF. So
nice.
But at that time, I was already I want to be on the team.
Yeah. Had you done a competition by then?
Yeah, not then. Oh, I might have. So Trey Green, he was in our area, and good dude. He
Oh,
was
yeah.
he said, "Hey, why don't you come go to a competition with me?" And then I rode with him a little bit, and I shot because you come out of horseshoeing school, you got like no work, but you're hungry, And
Oh, yeah.
so I'd ride with Quick or Trey Green or whoever would let me ride with him, but Trey was really good. He took me to my first contest, and Castle Rock, I was in a novice class or whatever.
So Trey used to be in Colorado then?
Yeah. I think he went through, like, he got his journeyman out here. He was a big member of the RMFA. He was a big part of my life growing up and in horseshoeing. I can't remember when he moved, but he had been here for quite a while.
I thought he was always just a California guy. I guess I didn't know that about him.
Oh, no.
But
No.
didn't he move
He's
back
actually
out
been
there
around.
to Colorado just recently?
I don't know if I think he's still in Colorado now.
Oh,
Yeah.
he is?
I think he's in California still.
Oh, California. Yeah, he's in
Yeah.
California.
He is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
okay.
he's in California. You can just tell how tough Trey is. There's no way he was born in California. That's where he's from. He's a tough man.
Yeah, he's very tough. I mean, that guy, he can go through some pain. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Funny story. So I was young, out of horseshoeing school, and I'm like, I got some time, and I was like, you know what, Trey, I want to go do some bronc riding. And I was too big for bulls, but I was like, I can do broncs. And I said, Trey, you did some cowboying. What do you think? And he's like, no. He's like, you're going to make shoes, and you're going to go to horseshoeing school. And I'm like, okay.
He just laid it out
Sounds
for
good.
you.
Sounds good.
He's like, no.
Just flat no.
That was Trey. So he saved me from that.
Oh,
Probably for
man.
the better.
Oh, he's a great guy. Yeah.
I
Do you remember how you did at that first contest?
Yeah, I think I won the novice class, and it was pretty basic, and I worked my butt off on it. I was like, and Trey was helping me, so I had I don't think there was maybe one or two, and then I if I remember, yeah, I think I did win it. It's been a while ago. That was back in '97 or '98.
That's awesome. I love going to like some of those like local contests, and you'll always see, like, not always, but usually you'll see one novice guy that's
Yeah.
like fresh out of school and tuned up. Like he is
Oh, yeah.
so ready to compete, and
always
it's just
gotta-
like, yeah, and he wins the whole thing, and you're like, man, like,
Oh, dude.
I wish there was some competition here for you so you could feel a little better, but it
Right,
still
yeah,
feels
yeah.
good. Like,
Oh, I was a mess, dude. So, I was like, all right, I'm going to win this thing. I need to have everything together. I went and got every tool I think I could have. I didn't have any money. And so I was buying the wrong stuff, or I'd have stupid stuff. I remember Trey going, nope, can't use that. Nope, you can't use this. He's like, oh, they'll make fun of you with this, so don't take that. So
Just flat out.
that's great.
So it was a big help that
Oh,
like
yeah.
you were
He was really
surrounded.
good. It was like,
Oh shit, I'm still lagging real bad.
right
anyway.
off the get. I was surrounded. Yep.
Yeah, you had like literally like two very good competitors to line you out through the whole entire thing. Is
Oh yeah.
man,
It
what
was
a
great.
blessing. Because there is
Yeah.
all those guys that show up to the contest. Like, what is it? Mike Poe calls them Cat 2 rulers. You can always see them coming where they got that long, unfoldable ruler from horseshoeing school still. And you're like,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
this
that
guy,
was-
it's his first time. Like, his first time
Yeah.
here.
Oh yeah. I was totally me. I even took an apron. Like
Did you?
like
Yeah.
those blacksmith aprons, and it wasn't. That's what Trey took from me. He's like, no, you can't have that.
That was probably a good call. That was a good call.
It was a really good call. Yeah.
Man, I even now, like, I only wear an apron in the shop if no one else is there and I'm grinding. Like, I'm just
Exactly.
like,
That's
I don't want anybody to see me wearing this thing. I'm not baking a cake in here. Like,
Right, yes.
I'll burn my shirt up before I wear one of those.
I know, man. I got one grinder that was like crazy.
I want to take a moment to tell you guys about Wellshod. And not just that they carry every item you can think of from every brand, including from the little guys. You can get some Adam Farr punches, some Ben Sneer hammers. They pretty much got it all in the hard-to-beat $10 shipping. But I also want to take a moment to talk about John himself. you see the Wellshod name at pretty much every single contest that you go to. And not only that, you see John himself there supporting what we do and investing his time. Heck, John's even jumped in the competition in his ring himself at some of the WCB contests. That speaks huge to me. And it also speaks huge that John wanted to support what we're doing with the podcast. They've agreed that if you guys use Brains at checkout, they're going to put a little mystery item in the box for you. So go ahead and support them, what they're doing, and it helps support us. Because we're all just one community.
Sparks, and I got an apron for that, but that's about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I refuse to wear one.
That's great. So how long was it before you got your journeyman?
So journeyman took me a little bit longer. I was bound and determined. So I knew I had to be a journeyman to be on the team. So I immediately started going to the journeyman. I was like, wow, do I have to wait 2 years? And like, no, you could take it whenever. So I started going to the journeyman test before I was ready. You know, I remember that I think the first time I took the test, Pethick was the examiner, and I burnt that toe clip probably 1.5 inches into the toe, just to cover the heels. You know, I had no idea how to fit the foot. It was terrible. I wasn't ready, but it took me a few more tries to get the journeyman.
Yeah, but it was probably felt pretty good once you got it. You felt like you were like a little bit on your way to the goal, though, huh?
Oh yeah, man. I was full of piss and vinegar, and I was like, I'm gonna be journeyman. I'm gonna make the team. I'm gonna conquer the world, man.
What on the journeyman test, like, was it just the fitting that kind of screwed you up, or was any other parts kind of holding you back?
Well, the whole thing. I mean, I really like the journeyman test because you got to be ready for that, right? I mean, you got to be able to shoe a whole horse with handmade shoes, and you got a time limit. It's a great test. Then the written is a lot harder, and then you got to do the bar shoe, right? So you really do have to be prepared. I mean, it's a good standard. I know it's kind of our standard growing up in the AFA and the industry right now, but I think it's a good basic standard.
No, I agree. I think it is a good basic. Yeah. I think Craig defines it, like puts it as like a driver's test. Yeah, you know, it is a very good like driver's test for everybody. It is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can pass that test, usually a pretty good horseshoer to go out and actually run a bit and like not kill horses.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, not put nails in blood.
Right, exactly.
Agreed.
Because you have to be able to. It's not just shoeing the horse; it's a test, right? And so it's a good standard test. And if you can take a test that somebody else has designed, and you have enough skill to be able to obtain the points or the proficiency to pass that other standard, then you can do a whole lot of other things.
No, I think I really do think that's like the best part of competition and the whole entire test is that it's the time that you have to do something that's not your idea and under a time limit. Because put people on, you hit both of those things. You put people under both of those things. That's when you see the weaknesses start to arise in the situation.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know. No, I think it is a very good test.
Yeah, and I think it like anything, this stuff is a perishable skill, and the more you work at it, the better you get. The more you lack at it, the more it goes away. So I think it's something you can spend your whole life working towards it, and you're never going to get perfect. But you can get closer and closer, and if you just say I'm not going to do it anymore, then it's gonna run from you.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Like, man, I feel it. Even if I just take like a couple weeks off and you go back to making shoes, you're like, wait, how was I doing this? Like, you're like, at one time I was making these, just not even thinking about nothing. Right, it's just,
you're like, I got this down. I'll never forget this, and like then you're screwed, you know. So.
Oh yeah, exactly. After you got your journeyman, did you just focus on competitions at that point?
Yeah, so obviously I wanted to build my business, and then competitions was my focus, and it's getting better. So I worked with Quick. I worked with just everybody. So I go to the contest and I see who the studs were, and I was like, hey, can I come ride with you? And you know how it is. The guys that are kicking butt, everybody asks them, "Hey, can I come ride with you?" Right? And so usually they just say yes, knowing that you're never going to call or whatever. But I was the guy that actually showed up. So I got the yes, and I'm like, cool. And then I would call them later, and it's like, all right, when can I come? And I didn't have that big a business, and so it was a good way for me to get to different shops, work with a lot of different people, and just obtain a ton of knowledge really quickly.
It sounds like there is a lot of handy people around in your area, though, right?
Oh yeah, the RMFA was great. So I had some really handy people. Everybody was in the competitions. We had the Four Corners competition, and then we had another competition in Castle Rock, I think it was. So we had 2 a year, and then there was usually 2 clinics. And then Quick usually had a clinic that we had at he had at his place. And so there was a lot of people that were focused in on being better and doing a really good job. So Northern Colorado kind of got a reputation of guys that are trying to do really good work.
No, that helps so much of like building yourself up and starting out in the area. But did you feel like it was a hard goal to attain a good business since there was so many handy guys in the area?
Yeah, there's a lot of horses here though. So there's, I mean, you get out of school, you just want to buy and get enough horses so you can buy bread. And then, right? And you just try to get one horse out there next, and then you go through. It's just like every progression. I'm probably is the same way everywhere, So you start going through all the nasty horses, and then you get through the nasty horses and the nasty clients, and then you get through you start getting some better horses, but you got crazy clients. And then eventually you start getting 1 or 2 good clients, and it starts just building from there, But
it's almost worse though, because you get that 1 or 2 good clients, and you're like, oh, those other ones really are bad. They do suck. It's not me just thinking it. They do suck.
They don't all kick you, or this lady paid me. So.
Yeah, because you kind of convince yourself when you're doing crappy ones, you're like, oh, all horses just stand this bad. Maybe it's me. Maybe, and then all of a sudden you do a couple of good ones, and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah. So I had that perspective from 3-day eventers and dressage people and stuff. I knew that there were people out there with money and horses that stood. Yeah. And then working with Quick, he's always Quick and those guys. They're always shooing the top horses. So I'm like, all right, that's the goal. They're at these horses, big warm bloods. They stand. The people have money to pay you. And he's like, all right, so I need to be really good so I can get those kind of clients.
No, that is such a that's pretty big of a help. Just to already know that exists.
Absolutely it is, yeah.
Because I had no idea. I grew up with team roping horses, and I went and rode with a team roping guy after school. It was we laid one down maybe once a week. It was just a thing you were doing. It was this is just the norm. This is what everyone's doing.
Yeah, that's not normal.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I finally rode with one guy to a jumper bar, and I was like, oh.
That's
okay. Okay. There's more out here.
There is, man. So that's something I tell the guys that apprentice with me. I'm like, you want to get a worldly view of horseshoeing. And it doesn't really matter what trade it is. And obviously our world is horseshoeing, right? But you want a worldly view. There's more out there than what is in your backyard. And as soon as you can get that worldly view, man, you are going to be competitive. Because you have a knowledge that other people aren't willing to go get. And you don't have the knowledge to be able to do things that other people just can't do. And it opens up it just opens up your world to see other things and go other places, and it becomes a lot more fun.
Yeah, just no, I think it makes sense. Even past just our horseshoeing, just your daily life, you see how that guy's in the other part of the world, other part of the country is running his life, and you think well, okay, that's a little more of a possibility to be that's something I'm interested in, and would my life to kind of be pushed towards. It is travel is so huge. And did you travel mostly just in the U.S. before, or did you go overseas before you made the team?
No, well, not overseas. I went to Calgary,
Okay.
I at the time I didn't have the opportunity to do the culture exchange program, and that's probably my biggest regret, and the one thing I didn't get to do, I would wish I did, but luckily I was able to go to Calgary and kind of see that, and I had a lot of things like going for me when it came to the guys that were around me, because I was around quick and because I went to contests. So the Four Corners contest was a great contest because it brought everybody. It was a big contest. So I got to meet Jim Poor and Bill Poor and Todd Walker and Austin Edens and Craig and just about everybody that was in the big in the industry came out there because it was such a cool contest.
Yeah, that's cool having that right in your backyard. Have all those top names, especially at that time where everybody had to travel.
Yeah,
with all their stuff.
I've heard about that Four Corners before, and it sounded like a pretty cool contest.
It was. Yeah. It was cool. So it was at the fairgrounds there, and everybody went, and it was always in the hot part of the year, and so it was a good vacation to get away from that. And it drew, we had some really big judges there. I mean, we ended up getting all the big names to come and judge it because it was a cool draw. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Colorado in the mountains in the summertime,
Yeah, no joke. Not just scorched is way better than going to New Mexico, probably.
Yeah.
We love you, Craig, but it's hot. It's hot. Or Texas, for that matter, man. It's just...
Unless it's wintertime, and then Texas is a great idea.
Oh man, those windstorms they get are pretty wicked. Like they get scorching across there. It's pretty wild. I remember waking up one morning at Poor's house and it's like half the water was out of his pool and the glass patio table was shattered and like blown over. It's like, I didn't know that was possible at all. I had no idea that even happened.
So I went to Jim's a bunch. So Jim was awesome because Jim will never tell you no, right? Like you say, hey, can I come down? And absolutely, he'll let you come down. And so I remember driving from Colorado to his place in my single cab pickup truck on diesel. And back then, I think I remember it was like $1 a gallon, right? And so we didn't,
Must be nice.
and there was no radio and we didn't have cell phones. So I just had this disc player, the CD disc. And when I left, I would drive all the way to Poor's and when he was in Midland, and I'd work with him there, and then I would drive all the way back and then try to shoe my horses and stuff. But it was crazy driving all the way down there. But we didn't have really any other way to get information unless you actually went to their shop and worked with them. And I always just worked my butt off, try to shoe as many horses as I could for them, try to be a help for them, and it really paid off. I mean, I was able to see so many different things. So it worked. That was a good strategy.
Hey, everybody. I just want to take a second to tell you about Farrier Box. First of all, we owe Farrier Box a huge thank you for being one of the first ones to jump on and support what we're doing here with the podcast. If you haven't heard about Farrier Box, it's a bi-monthly box that comes to your door. And it's filled with goods, kind of like the Chewy box to your dogs, but this one's not filled with crap. She gets advice from the top guys of the industry and puts together a box with a theme. They aren't just a bunch of random items. They always have something where some pieces of bar stock to practice for an upcoming contest with the punch or the fuller that you can use and fits that shoe. It's a great deal. She also throws in items that you wouldn't think of, like good soaps, things to take care of yourself, make your truck smell good. Get on Farrier Box and use code BRAINS at checkout, and you're going to get 25% off your first box. Thanks, everyone. That is so. Did you just already know at that time, I need to put this in my schedule to travel to these other guys' house?
Yeah. I knew if I was going to be, if you want to be the top of whatever industry you got to run with the guys that are at the top. Because that's the only way to know. Right. So, at the time there, that was Jim Quick. It was Jim Poor. It was Craig. It was Mark Milster. It was Jason Smith. So those guys were really the top. And so you had to you had to go hang out with them. You got to figure out what they know if you want to run with them.
Yeah.
You must have been
get all those little tips and tricks.
You must have been like a pretty likable person for all them people to like continually like be okay with having you around. Like, there's a lot of people that say,
right, yeah.
I've tried getting in with them and like they just almost push me away or whatever. So it's almost like a matter of an attitude thing, like getting around kind of people like that all the time, and you know.
I think you just got to keep trying. I think at some point, you know, they're just like, all right, I'll just say yes, and this guy will leave me alone, you know.
But you worked hard.
I don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet word got out that you were a hard worker and that you weren't weird. You know, that you weren't doing anything creepy when you were at these people's houses.
Right. Yeah. I think
because especially then, it's like it's not like they could check out your Facebook before they agreed to having you over. You know, it's like they were just met you at a contest or something. Like
yeah, and it was a small world, right? You know, like if you went to, you know, I was working for Jim Quick, so like Jim Poor, I'm sure he called Quick and said, hey, is this guy okay? You know, or you know, Craig or whatever. So
yeah, I think that's a safe one to bet. If Quick just lets you be around, you're an okay guy. He probably didn't need to look into it at all. He's like, okay, Quick lets you hang out. Like,
oh yeah,
it'll be good.
So me and Quick definitely have like this love-hate relationship. So
join the club.
So it's what you call like the complicated relationship thing. But yeah, I grew up with him, and I owe all the world to him. He taught me how to be a horseshoer and to forge and make tools and stuff like that. So it's he definitely. If it wasn't for Quick, there was no way I would have made the team. I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't have the worldview that I had going into it. So I owe a lot to that dude.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I love you kind of like shoot shots across the bow at Quick, but he loves doing them back. Like, so I have no hate for the guy. I really do like him, and he's taught me a ton. Like he is super handy. Like
yeah, and he's a good storyteller. That guy is crazy good storyteller.
You hang out with him for like just a little bit and you're like, I just want to know my history as good as he knows his history to be able to tell it. Like, it's such a good, he knows the history of the area he lives in, his family, of horseshoeing, of the tools. It's just like, he knows all the history, and it's like, just shows how much he cares about it all. And it's like, I hope one day I could relay how much I care about something as good as he can relay how much he cares about something.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy has a talent for storytelling I wish I had. Cause like the only other guy that I know that could probably beat Quick in storytelling is Jim Poor.
Yeah, they're two different routes of the story being told. Like that's it's two different deliveries completely. Yeah, it's good. So, what year was it that you first made the AFA team?
So I think that was 2001.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was 2001. I think I made the alternate, and then made the team the year. Well, you're on the team as the alternate, but actually compete the four guys the year after that. So.
Even then, the alternate still competed at Stoneleigh, correct?
Yeah, you get to do the individual. The only thing you don't do is the team chewing.
Yeah.
How many years did you have to try before you actually made it on to the American Farriers team?
So it was pretty quick for me. So I think it was 97 I went to horseshoeing school, and I think it was 2001 I was the alternate. So I was laser focused, right? So I was, I could go to the convention, you get your butt kicked, and then you just keep trying. And I was focused in on it, and it ended up working out. And at that time, when I made the team, that's when Craig and Quick and Mark and Shane were stepping down. So there were spots that were open.
Who were your teammates that first year that you made it then?
So I know it was Austin, Bill Poor, and then
Austin just told us too.
He did.
Yeah, I can't. I listened to Austin's.
He did.
But,
He just told us.
yeah, so it was, it was Troy Price was one of them. And then I can't remember who else it was.
That's right.
Because Todd went to the culture exchange program. And so part of our deal was to pick up Todd, or rescue Toad. So his nickname is Toad.
Yeah.
You must not have had very many distractions in your life from the time that you got out of horseshoeing school to the time that you made the AFA team then, huh? Like you said, you were laser focused.
I was laser focused, man. It was, I'm going to go to every competition. I want to be the best I can be. And I was focused, and that's all. I shot horses to buy coke and gas and steel and tools or whatever I needed to do. Yeah, it was definitely a focus.
So working with Quick, were you already making a bunch of your own tools?
So I couldn't afford to buy tools, so I started making tools. I couldn't buy a fuller, and
that's how I started making them. Is like, really? Man, I want to compete, but I can't buy any tools. It's like, and you need so many of them.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. So because I was like, I can't buy tongs, I can't afford tongs. I'll just start making them, and that's exactly how I got into making tools.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like a necessity, it's usually that's when the tool ends up a little bit better, I think, is like you actually have to use them. So you're like, well, this sucked. I'm not going to build them like that again. I'm going to do something different next time.
Yeah.
Oh, man, my first tools were so bad. And then I had the problem of seeing Quick's tools. So I could judge my tools on his, and I was like, God, they're terrible. Terrible. So, and he would take pity on me, and he'd be like, hey, dude, you need a fuller. Here's a fuller. Or he'd give me a pair of tongs. Or he took care of me, So
he was trying to save himself. He knew he was going to have to stand there while you were practicing. He didn't want the steel flying out of there, or the fuller breaking and flying out.
Yeah, I remember many a times him giving me or talking to me or helping me, and he was like, this is for my preservation, not yours. Oh yeah, it was rough, man. It was really rough. And you know how if you're really, really eager and you're just like, I'm going to do this, and you're going 100 miles an hour and just not even thinking, right? You're like, if I bend more steel, I'll get better. Like, that's not the way it works. But that's when you start out, and you have to put the brakes on just a little bit, and you gotta use your head.
This commercial and podcast is brought to you by the World Championship Blacksmiths. We're so excited to have the Trinket family support what we're doing here. It is a huge part of the topics that we have on this podcast, and it's where we've gained a lot of community at. And exactly what they are. They are a community that supports education through competition. So if you were looking for a support system behind you on your journey of becoming a better farrier, go join up and go to an event. You will never regret it. And they've been nice enough to offer us a 10% off on their online store or call-in orders for everything besides competitions and membership. So go hit them up, get some merch, and let some people know what you support. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
You do, but it's like, but do you also think that some good things happen in that tired time? Like where you're real worn down? Like I think there's a lesson in that by itself, huh?
There is, and I remember, so Grant Moon, I remember a long time ago when I was at Calgary, he was teaching, he's doing a clinic or something, and he said, listen, at the end of the day, you need to be really worried that the only thing that you did was make your arm sore. And that stuck with me. And Wow. He was like, well, how do you, like, I can't just be breaking my elbow. I've got to be getting better somehow. And so that was a really good, like, especially in the time of my career when I was trying to go 100 miles an hour. It was like I could make 100 nasty shoes, and I'm going to be really good at making nasty shoes. So you need to use your head, because the whole saying, practice makes perfect. That's not true. Practice makes permanent. Correct practice makes perfect. And so you have to use your brain. And that was a big turning point in my learning, is that it was like, I can't just make a bunch of shoes. I gotta actually make something that works. And I gotta learn, right? Because if the only way I'm gonna make the team if I learn fast. And how do you learn fast? Well, you gotta learn smart.
No, that's great advice. That's great advice. So how did you restructure your practices after that point?
So I tried, what I tried not to do was, if I didn't like it, I didn't try to just keep trying to fix it, right? So if there was a problem that I couldn't solve, then I had to stop and figure out that problem, right? So example, you're making a heel cock, and you've got a shunt, right? And it's got a nasty shunt. Well, how in the world do I make 50, 60 of these things and hoping that one doesn't have a shunt? Or do I understand the principle of why that shunt is happening, so that if I understand that principle, I never have that happen again?
Bingo. That is so big, I think.
Yep.
I think
you gotta
that
know
is...
the basics. The basics and principles. Everything is wrapped around principles. There's principles in whatever you do. You like it or not, there's principles behind things. Gravity was always going to work, right? The fire will get things hot. So there's basics there. And if you can wrap your head around the basics and you stick to principles, it's amazing how everything falls into that.
Man, no, I think that's something that's huge right there, is that people don't know how you see it a lot. They know, like they know the steps for this shoe, or they know the steps for this. And this has been like a demo topic I've been trying to like figure out in my head to actually communicate the way I'm thinking it, is like people don't understand the basics of forging sometimes. They just know how to make this shoe. But they like, so then when they get a new shoe or something, they're like, oh, well, I don't understand how to make that one. It's like, well, it's just this move, and this move. You already know how to do these moves and the basics of it. And like you're saying, like the principles of how steel moves in general, and how things get screwed up.
Right, absolutely. So so if you understand the basics of horseshoeing, and you understand the basics of forging, and then you understand the basics of a horseshoe, then like, all right, then the heel cock, the wedge, the tow bar, the whatever you want to say is just that extra part that you can put on to the basics. So it's building blocks, right? So you can build upon it. But if you don't have those basics, if you don't understand that, like building a heel cock is more important to grow the steel on the sides than it is the top, and that's why all your heel cocks are getting shunts, or you don't understand how things bump, you don't understand the simple basics, and you struggle with that, then you can't it's hard to get past that. But if you understand those basics, then man, you can move right away. You can get that done and move to the next part a lot quicker.
All right, we're going to go down a rabbit hole here a little bit. So it's like, what is your, like, I think this would be good. What to you, like, we'll just go through a plain stamp shoe. What to you is the basics of a bump?
You did good. I tried to lead you down that. I wanted that question.
Cool.
So basics. So what are basics? And I get frustrated when people, like, the basics aren't the same. The basics should be the same, right? So I come down from the school of Jim Quick and Shane Carter, and like, what are the basics? Well, is it flat? Is the horseshoe flat? That is very basic, and that is a principle through all horseshoes. Is it flat or is it not, right? Does it have sole pressure? Does it have sole pressure? Doesn't have sole pressure. Do the nails fit, right? And you're asking for an E6 nail. Does the nail go in? Does it wallow? Does it fall out, right? Do you have the basic elements of that shoe? Does it have a heel cock? Does it have a wedge? Does it have clips? What are the basic elements, right? So basic elements, is it flat? Is it sole pressure? And then you can get into, is it a section? Is it a section for that foot? Is the stock too big for that animal? And then you can get into, like, how does it fit? Is it a hunter shoe? Is it a pleasure fit? Is it a roadster fit? And you can go down that. So I always start with the very basics, and we start building upon that. And and I think that's simple basics. And then we can get into all kinds of rabbit holes down the line from there. But you've got to have some kind of standard. What are basics? And I'm talking basics. What's more basic than just a flat shoe, right? You can make any plain stamp shoe all the way to the big giant roadsters. You can make them flat, right? That can be a basic. Do you have nails that fit? Do you have nails that are coarse? Or are they too fine? Or are they wolfy? They're simple. Is it a real horseshoe? Is it not a real horseshoe? You know, and then that's all before I get into like sections. Is it forged properly? Is it smooth? You know, that type of thing.
No, it's you see it too at contests. You see shoes, like especially in like say the intermediate division. You see it in the open too somewhat, but it's like the intermediate division. You see them a lot where like the shoe that wins the intermediate division sometimes is not like the best looking shoe at first glance.
Right.
But when you start breaking it down, like you're saying, is it flat? Is it to size? And do the nails fit? And do the nails in the right spot? That is like. That's what goes on a horse.
Shane told me that years ago and continues to tell me that. He's like, man, are the basics there? And then is it a section? You know, is it simple basics? And it makes judging, I think it makes judging pretty easy. So like at the convention last year, I told the guys, hey, this is a horseshoeing contest, not an interpretive blacksmithing contest. Right? So
yeah.
Does it fit on? Is it going to fit on a horse? Is it safe for the horse? And then you can build from there.
So, but then like it takes a little bit. Like I agree completely in the horseshoeing classes, right? In the horseshoeing classes, that is a horseshoeing class, and say the forging classes. At this point, there's no like I agree. It's not an interpretive blacksmithing class. But it is a blacksmithing class to a point, and it is like, yeah, it's a forging class. There's no horse involved right now. The only thing is like it's a specimen class. You just have to match that specimen. That's key. But you get these hard decisions sometimes. Like, okay, you're judging and say this shoe is a little unflat. One shoe is, but you're like, I could fix like it could be fixed so easy.
Yeah,
but
no,
this shoe over here has a cold shut.
Yes, right. No, I hear what you're saying. So, like,
I can't fix the cold shut.
Yes, if we've got a shoe that's safe, it's a horseshoe, and it's got all the elements and stuff like that, and then you kind of go to, I always go to what, like if I got shoes that are getting close, then I'm saying, all right, what shoe takes less work to make perfect?
Yeah.
Right, so if it's a little unflat, but the heel cocks and everything is perfect, and then the other shoe is real flat, but there's cold shunts and stuff into it, you're absolutely right. It only takes a couple of whacks to make that shoe flat, and absolutely that's the winner. So no, yep, you are right about that too.
But I don't know if I'm right, man. These are the dilemmas I have in my head when I'm looking at things. I'm like, what would I do here?
Right. No, I've argued that quite a bit. So we've had I think when you get, so we in our local contest, we always had guys that would do well in the local contest, and we had local judges, but they would go to the convention or they would go to Calgary and they would get killed. And they would focus on like maybe whatever the monthly gripe was about our forging, right?
Yeah.
So like, you guys never make the shoe flat, or you guys, your heel cock it has to be like square with travel or something like that. And so they would focus on that, and then we'd go to Calgary or convention, they'd get killed, right? And so I think it's you get obviously it's the totality of what you got. So it's like, does it have the basics? Is it a well-forged shoe? Is it, and so you want to build on that to make the winning shoe. I competed, I always tried to make the judge uncomfortable giving me second place or third place or fourth place. So if
you don't want to leave it up to them.
Right, exactly. You don't want to leave it up to them, because then you're like rolling the dice on that stuff.
No, I'm glad you brought that point up, because I was thinking about it while we were saying it. It's like, don't get to judging your own, like the people listening, don't get to judging your own shoes outweighing the shop of like, oh, well, which one could win? Which one? Like, no, leave that out of your head. If it has a discrepancy, like John was saying earlier, figure out why that discrepancy is there and why it's happening to you, and cut that out of the system. That needs to go. Because you don't want to have to like, oh, well, if it came up to the judge and the other guy, well, you aren't up against the other guy that day. You're up against yourself, and you just got to do, like, make sure you have the basics and all the little extras. That's how you get in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're always competing against yourself. I mean, you have your competitors and you have your buddies, but you always are competing against yourself. It's you, the fire, and the steel, and what you can do under the pressure on that. And I've always found that the winning comes from the homework that you do at home, and then how you solve the problems that happen to you on the day.
Yeah, that is huge. Like, it's funny because like you never like I don't have any contests that in my head that I've lost or anything, and it's like been plenty of them where I'm like, oh well, this guy just made a really nice one that day. I always remember it was like even years ago, it's like, oh yeah, I screwed up this point. Like this is where it all went wrong. I did this to myself. Like
Yeah, yep. I'm like,
I went south.
Yep, absolutely. You go south and you donated your entry fees.
Yeah, man. So you were on the team 4 times, correct?
Yeah, I think it was either 3 or 4 times. I'm getting old. I'm forgetting, but I think it was definitely 3 times because I remember the last time Austin was done. That's that second time I think that's when we broke his back. We're making the big giant shoes. So they came out with these stupid giant shoes that were like 1 inch square is what you started with. And they were all huge, and we all killed ourselves trying to make these damn things. And I remember it was terrible. The only one that could make them was Bill Poor.
Of course.
Yeah. It's not a surprise.
Man, that dude is so strong. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So strong. He was the best partner you could ever have in a
I
2-man
bet.
competition.
Yeah, because I think maybe that's where Mark got the idea from, because Mark Milster had that for like these last couple of contests. He's had some of these shoes that are from 1 inch square that are just these huge freaking draft shoes that are like, yeah, like draft rocker bars and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, that's intense. Like, or Heinz Spavins out of it.
It's just painful thinking about it. Yeah, there's just big giant shoes. They're good 2-man shoes in Coke, right? You know. So, but if you have to try to make them in gas or something, good help you. They're terrible.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So even though like we have a trade that you never really hit the top of, or like perfect, did you feel like you feel a little relaxed after you made the team a few times? Like there was like, were you ever like, what's the goal now?
Yeah, so no, I always had the goal. So you want to make the team. That once you made the team, you're like, all right, well, we want to win Calgary. I want to win the World Championship. So I felt like I wanted to be on the team for 10 years. I wanted to win Calgary. I wanted to do all these different things. I wanted to go to Europe. I wanted to go to Scotland. So I had all these goals, and I knew the team, and it was cool because Quick was really good at kind of opening up my eyes a little bit before I made the team and saying, hey man, making the team is like going to college. And he's like, once you make the team, that's when the real learning starts. So don't go in the team thinking you're big, bad, you've got everything figured out. And he's like, but when you make the team, if you go in with the right attitude, you can learn a lot. So that was like my college.
That's a good one. And so what did you do after that then? So say your what did that be, your doctorate?
Right, yeah. Right, yeah, exactly. So I would guess, so for me it was like I wanted to learn as much as I could being on the team. And of course the first year you're just kind of like starstruck. You made the team. You feel like a superhero. You doing that, and then you go to your first practice and you find out that you suck. And it's going to take a lot to learn how to work with guys and to get better. So it was pretty eye opening in how bad I really was, and how much I had to learn. And so luckily with Quick, and the guys really kind of showed me or told me ahead of time that this is an opportunity to learn, and I just try to embrace that.
Did you How did it feel going to Stoneleigh your first time compared to the last time you went?
Oh, it was always magical. So it was always super cool to be able to go to Stoneleigh, and so we did the whole, went to Scotland and competed in the Scotland contest, and so of course that was after the Edward Barton thing. So and we ended up, it was at a different spot, but it's still really cool. And then the whole team would rent this little minivan, and we looked like, God, so we were the biggest rednecks showing up in England, and we literally tied our toolboxes on top of the minivan, and somebody had the bright idea of bringing a vise, those big Valley vices, and we tied that on top of the minivan too. So we were the Clampets running around England. It was pretty funny.
That is great.
Top of the line for back then, those Valley vices.
Oh yeah, they're terrible, but they were better than what they had. That was an upgrade from what they had, and they didn't even have their anvils tied down to the anvil stand. And we're like, are you kidding me? Like we're at the Scotland contest, and we're at this like museum type place, and they got all these beautiful horses, and these guys are phenomenal craftsmen. Like, I mean, that's an understatement. And the freaking anvil's not tied to the base. Are you kidding me? It's like, so we were like, we're going to bring our own tools. We're going to bring whatever we need to do because we're going to get that edge, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You see old pictures of guys like holding the heel down and stuff while someone's going at the horn. It's like,
right.
If you know when someone's doing that, it's not a great time at all.
So the Scottish contest, it was so bad that the anvils had a big swoop in them. So
I've heard that.
They would, if they dinged them up, somebody came in with a grinder and ground it down. So there was a big swoop. And if you didn't know better, and you were trying, so we had this bar shoe that we had to make. So you had to weld this big bar shoe. And if you didn't know better, when you flipped it over, you'd break if you're on that swoop, you'd end up breaking your weld because it wasn't completely welded. And so we figured it out really quickly, and we just go to the corner and get it welded. Well, the Canadian team was over there, and they were having trouble with their welds. And so I ran over to them like, dude, it's breaking because of the swoop and the anvil, and it's all, and they were like, go away, kid. And they wouldn't.
No,
they never did get their bar shoe welded.
Just from that attitude.
Listen to the kid.
Yeah.
Just from that attitude.
But I mean, and then you go to Calgary, or you have your own contest, and your anvil's tied down, everything's perfect, and you're using like the best hammer you can get, and you got all this stuff, and you suck. Like, how can they make such nice shoes?
Yeah.
So you think there's something to being said to being able to adapt to any situation versus just being set in one way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think some of those guys are so good, it doesn't matter what you give them. They're going to make whatever. It doesn't matter. Are
we prima donnas in the United States by having everything tied down? Or do we just have to loosen up a little bit?
I don't know, man. I think at this point, like as much work as that has gone into competing in the United States, and what Craig has done, and the contest that we've put, and my hopes is that the bar is just raising like crazy.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I think 100%. The bars keeps on going up.
Yeah.
Man, I know for me, it's like I got an anvil like that. That's a big old swoop that's unlevel and it's all screwed up. So when I go to Craig's trailer, I'm like, oh, this is nice. This thing has corners. This is flat. It's got corners and stuff. This is excellent.
It's nice.
It's always funny watching somebody center punch shoes on my anvil the first time. It goes jumping off the anvil because it's got a big old hole in it.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, just don't tell them.
Yeah, I really do. I usually forget. I don't even know what's going on.
No, right, because it works for you.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'm a lazy person, so I just deal with the screwed upness sometimes. Like, well, I got work to get done, so I don't. Right, yeah. I don't take care of the anvil. When did you make the move to law enforcement?
Okay, so I was done competing, and so I'm really goal driven. If I have a goal, I would go after it like crazy. And so, my goals were like, I want to make the team, I want to do Calgary, I want to do all this stuff. And then I kind of lost my goals, right? And so I made the team. The team's a grind. Competing is a grind. At the top level I mean, absolutely. I think we were gone at the time 26 days between the convention was over to August. 56 days I was gone from home between that time, between February to August. And I was trying to run a business. I had a wife, then we had a kid, and I was gone all the time. And so I was like, all right, I got to take a break from competing. I got to back off, right? And so I did that, and then I started losing my goals. And then once I started losing my goals, I kind of got frustrated with my clientele. I had the barns, I had all the rich clients, I had the big warm bloods and stuff like that. And I got tired of them because they had first world problems, right?
Yeah.
And I was tired about their bitching about stupid things like their mocha latte wasn't right, or their whatever Mercedes-Benz wasn't, the warranty wasn't right, or and I just wasn't in their world, and I never was going to be in their world, and I didn't have that competition drive anymore. And so I was like, I want to go surf. And so I had this overwhelming desire to go surf, and I was burnt out, I was frustrated, I was just burnt out, and so I needed to change. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go. I had a guy that I was teaching how to shoot horses, and he was law enforcement for about 10 years, and he was on the SWAT team, and he would tell me stories about being on the SWAT team, and those guys had the same kind of drive, and they were go-getters, and they weren't sloths, and it was just a whole different world, right? And so they were going after bad guys and making a difference and serving. And I was like, you know what, that's what's missing out of my life. And I wanted to go do that. I wanted to go serve. And so I was like, I'm going to go do that. So I decided to make the shift.
Wow.
And what did you have to do to get on the force?
So I went through an academy that was 11 months, and then in Colorado, you have to be certified. So you got to go through some kind of school, and then you go through a test that makes you certifiable. And then once you're certifiable, then you get hired. I think you got about a year or so to get hired, and then you get hired, and then you go through their in-house. And you work for that agency for a year, and then you become certified.
Okay.
Wow, that's a process.
It is. It was extremely tough to get on the force, and extremely tough to get hired at the time.
I was going to say, so how many people are in the school that first 11 months compared to how many of those get hired at the end?
Yes. So then it was really bad. So that was 2008 where we had the economy crash, and it was a little bit after that. So it was so I went to school at 2010, 2011, something like that, and there wasn't a whole lot of people getting hired. So a lot of agencies did a freeze, and so they were just kind of hiring who they had to, and so it was very competitive. So being competitive, I was like, all right, I'm going to be valedictorian. I'm going to get 100% on my test. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be ahead shoulders. I think out of my graduating class, I probably 5 or 6 people got hired. And there was 13 that was in the class, 13 or 14.
So
it's tough.
During all this, were you able to shoe any horses on the side, or were you fully devoted to the process?
No, I was full-time horseshoer, part-time going to the academy, or however you say it.
Did you kind of feel a shift in your mind, when you were trying to strive for more goals or different goals? Did your attitude just become a little bit better because you were working towards a goal and something else?
As soon as I had a goal, man, I was like Mr. Positive again, right? So I got a goal, and I'm going to go attack the goal, right? So that's what it ended up. I got out of my funk. It was new, right? So I'm like, I think probably my biggest fault is, of course, I got a lot of faults, but probably my biggest is I'm ADD. So,
Yeah.
like, I was like, all right, this is something new. It's shiny. I'm going to go for that. It's exciting.
I didn't want to say it if you didn't know it, but I was like, man, you sound like me. You got some ADD going. It's
that is me, dude.
So it's like, so at that same time, did you start dropping more and more horses? Because you were like, I'm going this way.
Yeah, so my plan is to keep one barn, and then because it was all in one location, and then because we couldn't make ends meet just being a cop. So I don't know how my wife agreed to this, but so I was going to keep one barn, which was the dumbest idea. Like, so you have one barn, and like if I get fired from that one barn, we're screwed, right?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I was like, I'm just going to keep this barn and get rid of all the ones so I can just go on Tuesdays and shoe here and it'll be fine. And that was dumb because as soon as I got hired and became a cop, they fired me. And I should have kept all the small backyard horses, but it didn't.
Yeah.
But I kept some. I still kept shoeing some. I didn't have a whole lot of horses. And it's probably in the end, now I look back at it, not shoeing a whole bunch at that time probably revitalized myself and saved my body, and it ended up being good for me.
I bet so. Now it was like the pay low as a cop just because you weren't certified yet?
Yeah, so when you come in, most of the places will have like a pay ladder. So you come in at like basic pay, and then every agency is different, but then you stay in for 4 to 10 years, and then you become like master officer pay, and then you, if you promote, obviously there's more money at the sergeant level and stuff like that.
I bet that was great for you though, because you were able to like see a program and you're like, I just have to achieve these things.
Yeah,
and I'll get more pay.
Yeah, well, yeah, the master officer thing was just like how much time you spend there.
Yeah.
But I was more focused on, I wanted to serve, I wanted to go get bad guys, and I wanted to take drugs off the street. I would help people out, and because again, I had seen so much first world problems. I wanted to see, and I wanted to help out people that really actually needed help.
Yeah. And because you started getting into the dog side of it, didn't you?
Yep, I sure did. So that actually worked out pretty well. So I was really I love getting drugs. I would get bad guys. We'd go after the gangsters, and we'd get the dope, we'd get the guns, and those guys are the predators, right? And so I wanted to be the predator of the predators. And so I did it without the dog for a while. I was a very proactive cop. And then I noticed that the canine was the way to really, really make a difference when it comes to getting drugs off the street. Because we have the Fourth Amendment in the United States. And what the Fourth Amendment does not cover is contraband, and drugs is contraband. And the dogs have the ability to smell the drugs out, and then we train them to indicate to the odor of the drugs. And then once we got that, and some other case law, we were able to use that to be able to search vehicles. So drug trafficking becomes a dangerous gig when you've got canine officers around.
And did you have a part of training the canines, or was it mostly like just they came to you as like a started dog?
No, well, you have to train them. So what ends up happening is you get selected as a canine handler, and every handler is a trainer. There's just no two ways. You're around an animal.
Yeah, like you still got to finish it off.
Yeah, every horseshoer is a horse trainer. There's you train that horse to stand. You're also a psychologist, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But you train the dogs. But what happens is you get the dog, it's got some training, and then you have to go to an academy, and you've got to train the dog and get certified to do the narcotics, and then you have to do the same thing for the bite work.
Okay, yeah, that makes. I know that my neighbor does that same thing. It's super interesting to me. like, because fentanyl's new here, it's like, and it's new everywhere. But that is like, so now he's been starting fentanyl dogs and getting them finished off, and he does the scent side of it. So were you more on the scent side, or were you more on the bite side?
So we ran dual purpose dogs, so that means you got half of our job was dope, and the other half was bite. So
Okay.
so we did the whole spectrum. So we did a bunch of narcotics, and so it was the major drugs like cocaine, meth, heroin, and acid, and then fentanyl ended up coming in, but it was always mixed with meth or some other drugs. And so if you have a fentanyl guy, the dogs are going to usually hit on the car because they got heroin or they got something else in there too. And they've started training the dogs on fentanyl now, but when I was there, fentanyl was so dangerous that we did not train the dogs to hit off of fentanyl, but it wasn't a problem because those guys, you go to meth first, or you go to heroin, or you usually go to meth first, or cocaine, and then you end up heroin, and then you go to fentanyl. But then they started putting that fentanyl into the pills, and they started these little blue pills that they would put on tinfoil, and they'll burn that. And then, of course, that's getting real dangerous now. But yeah, so we did the scent work, and then so we had to train 4 hours a week on the dope work, and then we had to train 4 hours a week on the bite work.
Does that last throughout the dog's active duty, that they have to keep doing that schedule?
Yes, you've got to keep training. So every agency is different, but we ended up using a system from Utah, and it's called Utah Post, and it's an international program. And luckily, through my whole horseshoeing world, that I understood the benefits of a difficult program or a international program that has bigger views. And Utah was luckily one of the programs that we just kind of accidentally went to. The handler that was there before me knew that Utah was a good place to go, and then that's where we ended up going. But yeah, so we would train. You have to train. It's a perishable skill. And there's a lot of litigation in courts when it comes to the canines. So just like if you're thinking like DUIs, the litigation is just as big with the dope stuff. Because if they can get you on training, or if they can convince the court that the dog didn't indicate but you cued the dog, or you didn't train the dog well enough on the bite work, you can get yourself in all kinds of trouble.
Wow.
That is such a good point. Yeah, so they'll look back and be like, well, Rocco missed his scent training schedule last week, so
right, yeah,
he's probably a little off his game.
Right, and that's how they go. And if you don't have your training records, then they can get that 10 kilos. That guy that got caught with 10 kilos, he goes back on the street, right? So
wow.
That's a problem.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of validity to it though too, huh?
Oh yeah.
Because I know if I don't run my dog for 2 weeks, let's say, he's probably going to run a deer, or he wants to. Like he wants to try. He wants to trash a little bit, and so I could see that being. I didn't know that they had like that, and it was public. It must be public record then of their
absolutely.
Schedule.
Yeah, so once you become a canine cop, man, I tell you the amount of paperwork that goes into that is just astronomical. Because not only are you running the street, you've got to run the trainings really seriously. And every training that you do, you have to document everything about it. And it has to be an orderly setup, and it has to be set where because it's public record, and you have
whether it's good or bad for the dog.
Exactly. So you have to show them your warts as well as you show them the good work. Or the defense attorney is like, you can't show them a perfect record because there's no such thing as a perfect record. So you have to show everything. You have to stay on top of it, and it's always a litigation thing. So we became really, really good at being in court. We were good at talking in court. We were really good at defending ourselves. And then every canine officer you see that's been on the street for a couple of years, they're all experts in court, like literally been set and recognized by the court as an expert.
That's
sense.
awesome. That is pretty cool. I didn't know all that. It's that. And now, since you're training this dog so much and you're with him so much, is there ever times where you doubt him? Where you're like, training didn't go good the other day?
Yep. So there's an old saying in the canine is trust your dog. You've got to trust your dog. So training is training, and what happens on the street, you got to trust it, right? So if you have doubts in your dog on the street, the dog's going to show doubts, right? So you've got to rely on your training, let the dog do the thing, and that's a big thing. That's a big fight.
It's hard
because later I became the trainer of our unit. Cause me, Mr. Focused, I'm like, being a handler is not enough. I got to be the trainer. I got to run the program or whatever. But the guys would doubt themselves, and I said, I think he just sat for his toy, or he just sat because he knew I wanted him to sit, or something. They would feel bad or they'd get nervous because if it comes out in court that it wasn't true, then they would get in trouble and the guy would get released or whatever. So we had to really work on training and really convince the guys, just trust your dog on the street. Just if he doesn't sit, then he doesn't sit. If he sits, you trust him and you go on from there. And we had a real serious program, and we were really honest about what we did. And most of the time, we would either find drugs or a reason for why the odor was in the car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever just have a cold dog that was just like, no, he's just not very good?
Well, yeah, we had a few of those. So no dog is perfect, right? And so, but we usually wash them out in the training program.
Okay.
And they would show that they're not going to be fit for the street. And then you don't really know until you actually get them to the street, and then you can identify it pretty quickly once they're on the street. And it's usually nerves, or the dog is lazy, or he just wasn't meant to be a police dog, or whatever.
And there's
then you just
lots more distractions out on the street versus just like in the training program as well. Like life is going on out there, right?
There is, but we trained in a realistic scenario-based training program. So we tried to make it as real as we possibly could. And we would do mock stops on the street. We would do because if you had something buttoned down that you thought was good, defense attorney would find a hole. And then you would button that down, and the defense attorney would find a hole. So we were always thinking, and the training system that we used was always ahead of that curve. So it was the number one most recognized training system in the world. So.
Man, and you'd have to have guys like yourself that were so driven to be correct, because you're kind of always under the scrutiny of for some reason they're trying to prove the good guy is bad.
Oh yeah, and that gets to people. It gets to people like they're tired of being called phonies, and they're tired of being called, untruthful and stuff like that. And you really have to be. You have to go for it, and it's a government job, right? So you're not getting paid more for being really good at what you do, but there's a lot riding on it, and so you gotta find those guys that are into it, that want to make a difference, that are high drive type people.
Oh, that is so. What? No, I think all that stuff's awesome, man. Like that is and I could see how your path led there, that you were
why you want
it's a cool goal. Yeah. It's a cool, and it's a cool new goal that you did serve your community and not even serve your community. Like, I think we become horseshoers for a reason of I think you have the same mentality as me a little bit of there's gratification an animal can give you that no person could ever give you. Having a well-trained dog or being able to help a horse or train a horse in a certain way is something that's nobody could ever say thank you in that way that the animal did. And so it was man, you probably got pretty good, you felt good about these dogs when you were done, when they were out there working and they're making a difference.
I tried. I mean, that was my goal. I wanted to make a difference. So I believe I know drugs are cities' problems, are our community's big time problems, and listen, I'm not for somebody that is caught with weed or even with meth that has to do prison time. I think that's a complete waste of time. And I think there's ways of, if you get caught with that stuff, that maybe your punishment is rehab. And at the same token, that we don't make drugs legal, and we don't make the people that are selling this stuff and the people that are making it are straight up predators.
Oh yeah.
They are stealing these people's souls. Meth,
Yep.
heroin, fentanyl will steal a person's soul, and they get so addicted to this stuff they cannot function in society. So why not go after the people that are selling this stuff harder than ever? And that's where the dogs and stuff came in. And I'm not after the users. I'm after the people that are selling this crap, because the crimes that are happening, all the theft crimes, I wouldn't say all of it, but a majority of theft crimes are for the users to get more drugs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you made it harder to traffic drugs and you make it harder for them to get stuff, then you can make a difference on the crime and the community, make it a better place. And that's kind of that was my I wanted to serve, and so what was the best way to serve? Make community safer. Well, what's a good way to do that? We'll get rid of as much drugs and put violent criminals in a place where they can't hurt people. Put them in jail.
Yeah.
And
Then
Canine was the way to do that.
Makes your guys' jobs easier. Like if you don't have to focus so much on like all the petty stuff going into it, you can actually like put your resources into the the hardcore sellers or whatever, dealers.
Yeah, so everyone that gets into police work want to make a difference. They want to go get bad guys, right? They don't want to take the petty theft crime. They don't want to take, hey, can you come and tell my kid what to do? They don't want
giving
to
giving seatbelt tickets.
Yes, or hey, you guys need to go get your quota tickets because we just need to tax people more. I mean, and there's a ton of work in the cop world that's not cop related.
Something I was kind of wondering is,
frustrating.
Were you on the force then when marijuana became legal in Colorado?
Yep. Yeah, I was. Yeah. So like right at the time I became a police officer, marijuana became legal, and you weren't gonna, get in trouble for having, marijuana.
Was that kind of weird?
I don't think, not really. I mean, I never was against marijuana. And as a cop, there's not too many people that have a drag out fight on people that are smoking weed. Like we're just chilling, right? And so I really wasn't like meth or marijuana wasn't my focus, but when it came to like meth and heroin and stuff like that, that's what I was like, that can make a difference, right? That is some bad stuff. This will take your soul.
Oh man, it takes the whole city. Like Portland is, it's legal to use hardcore drugs in public. There's no charges for it, nothing, and like you can go ahead and steal up to like, I think it's like $1,500 worth of items as long as it's you were going to sell it to buy food or something like that. And so it's like, it's just those towns rampant, and the town's rampant because of hardcore drugs. Like that's how it goes. No, it is. And so did you ever feel frustrated? Like, was there ever a turn? I know this took a big turn, but it's like, is there ever a turn in the time where you were like, it doesn't matter if I arrest these guys because they don't do anything with him anyways?
Yeah, so that's what's happened. 2 years ago when COVID happened, and when I think it was George Floyd, when that happened, Colorado came around and made a bunch of laws that was, one, legalizing drugs, legalizing crime, and turning cops into bad guys. So the cops were the first, after this legislation was passed, the cops were the first ones, when you made a complaint, that you had to prove yourself innocent. So the liability just went through the roof. And so every cop that was out there being a cop and trying to go after bad guys, all of a sudden the liability that went onto your shoulders just became insane. and that's not even talking about, like, dude, you've got a job where you put on a bulletproof vest and you put on a gun and you're told to go out and go to the nastiest parts of our community, make split-second decisions where you can end somebody's life or get yourself killed, and here's $40 an hour. And then they put the legislation on top of that. It just became unbearable.
And so is that what kind of pushed you to start doing the tools?
So I did the tools way before I was a cop. So I had a whole tool business and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I go down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah.
But it's so I was doing, so that's probably my biggest nemesis is my ADD when it came to competing, because I got to the point where it was like, oh, look, I can make these tongs like this, or ooh, I want to make this fuller over here, or I can make my Yukon Forge horseshoeing knives over here, and then oh yeah, right, you got to practice for your competition, right? And so I was making tools and then it just builds, right? The tool making business, if you start pushing it, it's just a snowball. So you start like, it's just like any other business, but there's a certain point where it takes all your time just to get the orders done, so you don't have any more time to practice, or you don't have any more time to do anything like that. So I was building it, and I was going down to Jim Poor's quite a bit, and we, I was looking at expanding, and then I did a so that's probably one of the big reasons why I ended up going to law enforcement, where I kind of lost my goals, because I did a market analysis of horseshoeing tools, because I was looking to invest into CNC machines and buying a bigger shop and all this other stuff. And so I looked into, like, well, how many horseshoers are there in the United States? How many horseshoers are there in Europe? And at the time I was selling to Crothers, and I had lots of stores carrying my tools and things like that. And I was trying to push stuff into FPD, and I was having conversations with those guys and stuff like that. And so I was like, all right, well, if I really want to get this ramped up, how much money do I need to invest in equipment? And then how big of a market could I hope to get? What would that equal out? And it just didn't really equal out. Like, there's not, so like the market for horseshoeing tools, I mean, really is quite small. Like, I mean, yeah. And then even when you go to Europe and stuff like that, you have to like grab a big portion of that market to make it worth your while. Where, like, if you would have, I don't know, if you picked like knife making, so like that market is huge, right? So yep. You only have to grab a small portion of that market to be able to make a living on that. So I got depressed, because I was like, well, I put all this work and build up this thing, and then the goal for that isn't there. And so, and that was a fault in my head, and I never got out of that fault, which I'm not sure why I didn't, but there's making horseshoeing tools and stuff is a gateway. You build your business up in that. There's other avenues you can go down. I mean, you can go yep. down to making custom blacksmithing parts. So you can, like Jim Poor did, where he ended up making parts for the oil field or for other customers and stuff like that. You just keep growing it, and I kind of kicked my own butt, and I didn't listen to one of the things that I tried to always tell myself, especially when I was trying to make the team, to enjoy the journey and not focused on the end goal. And so I lost that for a little bit there. And I was like, wow, the end goal is not what I thought it would be. And instead of enjoying the journey, right, there's wins in everything that you can do. And like, it doesn't matter if you're starting out from the very beginning, there's if you enjoy what you're doing, it's its own goal at the end, right? So yeah. I lost that. And that was one of the reasons why I kind of got out of tool making at that point. But maybe realizing it is why I jumped back into it.
I remember, like, back in like horseshoeing school, Jake Engler came and did a demo for the class one day, and I remember he had a Yukon Forge hammer, and I remember like looking at it and had like claw marks going through it, and like picking it up thinking like that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen, like a hammer with the claw mark in it and Yukon Forge. And Jake then, this was like 2010, and he had said, like, this is the best hammer, and he had a Yukon Forge Fuller. And then Jeff even had some there, too, and, like, they said, like, these are some of the best Fullers ever. And we just saw Jake a month or so ago. He judged a contest up here, and I remember seeing the same Fuller that he had then, and it was, like, almost whittled down to nothing. And he's like, this is the best Fuller I've ever had. He's like, just puts a nice top in there. He's like, I'll never get rid of that thing. And I still remember that, like, seeing the first Yukon Forge hammer Fuller, and it's something to be said. I mean, that Jake still loves using it over any other one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Jake was cool. So when those guys were coming on and stuff, and then really like pushing the envelope and stuff, and it was like a whole nother group of talent that just coming in. Like Jake, oh my gosh, Jake was amazing, and it was just taking off. But yeah, he had bought a few tools. I remember that, and that's when I was going crazy. Probably right before I actually went crazy.
Yeah, before.
Did you? So when you jump back into the tools, did you jump back into it thinking like, well, I'm just ready to enjoy the journey now, or did you jump back in it thinking the market was better?
No, I don't have any delusions that it's any bigger or any better, but it's I kind of got back into just enjoy the journey. So I got back into I had enough of cop work just became way too much liability. Right, so I wasn't willing to give my life to the city, and then they didn't have your back. I figured out really quick that it wasn't you're the next man up. So if you didn't show up to work, they'd hire somebody else. If there was a question somewhere in something, they were going to cover their butts before they ever covered yours. So I realized that, and I was like, you know what? It's just not worth it. Like they don't want you to be a cop. They don't want you to go get bad guys. They don't want you to go get the dope. They don't want you to do any of that stuff. They basically want you to not get them in trouble, and that's not why I became a cop. And luckily, I had a trade, and I was able to jump right back into it, which was really good. So I feel bad for guys that feel like they're stuck. I feel bad that guys that don't have another trade, another option, they're like, well, there's nothing else I can do. And that in itself is a lie. I mean, and there is an issue with law enforcement with suicide. We had a gal at our PD that committed suicide right before I was. I think either I was right on the street or right after it, but it's a real issue, and I think the mental health for cops is insane. I mean, like the stuff that you see and you do is stuff that I'll never shake. I had stuff happen to me that I will never forget and has changed me indefinitely. And these guys, if you can't get out of that, and if you lose it. You lose your drive for it, and it becomes a big mental health issue.
I could see that. I could see that being, especially once you don't have the gratification there anymore from the outside people or from your higher ups, and you're feeling like, well, I'm just doing this for nothing at this point. Right. I don't want to make you relive any of those bad times, but do you have a good moment in there that you were like super proud of your dogs and super proud of something that you were like, that was a hard one to figure out, and we did it. Like we won.
I'll tell you what is the most addictive thing is tracking a human being. So
I can imagine, man. Like I like tracking animals, and I can think is like the only step from here is people.
Yeah, dude, it is the most addictive thing in the world. So we trained so I went to school, and they're like, hey, you can use these dogs to track people. I'm like, I'm in. So we started focusing, and it's a tough thing to do because especially in urban environments, there's all kinds of different odors and stuff. But done right, you can track people. And so we had I've had several times where we've tracked guys that there's no way that you were going to find them, and we were able to catch them and get them, like really dangerous human beings that needed to be into jail. And so that was a lot of fun. And then teaching guys how to do the same thing, and they tracked people down and got people. That was really, really gratifying. Let's see, one of our big dope cases, we took off I think it was 12 pounds. Or no, it was more than that. It was 22 pounds of meth. It was multiple guns. A lot of the stuff that K9 does sets up investigations for drug task force to bring down gangs, to bring down big-time drug trafficking and stuff like that. So I was super proud of that. So there was lots of times that we were proud of it, getting the big dope cases and stuff down. And then the camaraderie in the canine world is just like the horseshoeing competition world.
So that is awesome, man.
Yeah. So that was kind of neat. I do miss that, but you have that in the horseshoeing world too.
So you're not on the...
it sounds like high drive people in each one. So.
And you're not on the force now, then?
What were you saying?
Nope. So September last year, I had my 10 years in, and I said, I think it's time for me to go back to my trade. And my wife agreed, and we decided. I bounced and went back to shoeing horses and making tools and making stuff. I like making stuff, so it's if it's new and exciting to make, I kind of get into it. But horseshoeing stuff is awesome. So I like making the knives. I like making the fullers. I like making whatever. I just like making stuff.
Yeah.
And did you, you probably knew that you were going to go to that route beforehand, before you quit from the force. Did you set yourself up for it? Because I see you got a Haas back there. You knew that you probably had to buy some equipment to get back into this. So was that something you started buying those things before you quit, or did you quit and then just time to double down?
Well, no. Well, it was time to double down as soon as I quit, but I did do that. So I ended up. So I had a pretty big shop. Well, it's not huge, but I had a shop that was uninsulated, and so I started all right. Well, I want to have a machine room. I want to insulate it. I want to get everything set up so when I quit, then I could just go after it. And so I did an extension onto the shop, and then we ended up putting the machine room where I put the Haas and I put a laser and a lathe, and then I insulated the whole shop so I could forge and work in it all winter long. I took a couple of years to do that, and that made it even harder because you've got the goal in mind, and you're setting everything else up to bounce, and the closer I got, it was I'm so done with this.
Oh, I bet. You're just ready to leave early. You're just what? I got my own place here. I got places to be. Especially with the ADD mind, you're once you get something there, you're it's ticking nonstop. You're I'm not really here right now. I'm over here.
What really probably set everything in motion was Forge and Fire.
Really?
I was going to ask about
that. Oh, that's right, because you were on Forge and Fire too, huh?
Yeah, I ended up being on it 3 different times, but it was because I saw your episode way before I did it. And
I went and lost, went and did bad, got first loser, second.
Right, yeah. So my wife was like, hey, you need to go do this, because when it came out, I'm like, that's a horseshoeing contest. But you don't have to put holes in the damn thing. You just got to make a pointy thing that's sharp. That's all you got to do.
No blood involved at all.
Right. So I'm like, I could do that. But I was done competing, right? And so when I got out of horseshoeing competitions, I was like, there is no way I'm doing another subjective competition again. I'm just not going to do it. Well, that was a lie. So I was it was 7 years into Forge and Fire before I jumped in. And my wife was like, you need to do it. And I'm like, all right. So I told her no forever, and then I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I did the online application, and then got a phone interview. They liked me there, and then I got the Skype interview, and then I was on the show. But
what was that like being on
how did
TV?
your first time?
It was like a horseshoeing competition, except that they were, so it was exciting. So they took really good care of you. Of course, you got all the cameras and stuff like that onto you, but it felt like a competition. So it felt like Calgary or something like that, because it was fun, because you knew it was going to be on TV and stuff like that. But as soon as they said go, it was just like I was back in Calgary. I put my head down and I was like, I had done my homework and I just went after it, because I didn't just go. I called Jim Poor. I called Kathleen, or not sorry. I called Jim Poor, Kelly, sorry, and then I called Craig and Shane. I called all those guys and I said, hey, what do I need to do? What do I need to know? Because I know they want to have drama and stuff like that in there. And they all gave me the skinny on the lighting, the moving the glue and stuff around, how they tell you what you're going to do, and then 45 minutes later you got to go do it. But it's not, you don't have 45 minutes to think about it. They've got, they're going to, it was like, it's go, go, go. And then you have to go do it. But I felt just like it was a horseshoeing competition when they said go.
That's cool. They treated you well. They treated us like crap. It sounds like you had a way better experience than me, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a great experience. They were so nice.
Oh yeah, they were like, I waited at the airport the first time for like an hour before they picked me up, and then they just dropped me off in like this crappy Hilton hotel in the ghetto. And they're like, I remember walking down to the lobby, and I was like, I don't have a charger cord. Is there a store nearby that I can go get one? He's like, dude, you don't want to be walking around here. He's like, just stay in the hotel. It's like, okay, I guess my phone's gonna die.
Oh, that sucks, man. Yeah,
it was weird.
God, they took really good care of us. Like, it was, and I spent the whole time messing with the guys' heads and stuff like that. Like, before we go, like, I showed up with my WCB like jacket with the Roadrunner and all the, you got all the stuff on, Yeah, so I messed with those guys from the very get-go on that deal. But it was,
you got in their brain.
Really
did you win all three times?
Did you? Yeah.
No, so I won the first time. And then the second time I got second. And then the third time, I was convinced I was going to win. I ended up getting beat by this kid. I made a mistake on my heat treat, and he beat me. But they never aired the third one. I think the program's done.
Yeah, because I remember seeing you on there twice.
That kind of sucks.
I know, right? Yeah, so it was only like shown twice, and the third one, I don't think they'll ever see it. I can't even show the sword that I made on Facebook because we signed that contract.
And it says in there like that you can't show it till after the show's been
aired.
There has to be some type of like what do they call it? What's that called? Like you probably know what this word is. Like statute of limitations. Yeah. By this point,
I'd love to show it, but it was like it was all that COVID stuff at the end of the COVID, and so a lot of the so they made you wear the mask every time the camera was on you, and I asked later because they won't communicate with you or anything. They don't. But I asked a couple of guys that were producers because became friends. I became friends with the producer, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, do you think what are they going to do with the show and stuff?" And he's like, "Dude, a big portion of this reality TV that they had the mask, they're just scrapping because it has a bad look."
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it kind of sucks for you, but it like. In a way, it's kind of cool. No one's going to see you get second,
Right.
But also, like, it sucks for the kid that won. It probably was the only time he went to, and he was like, man, I don't even get to, I went and won, and I don't even get to show anybody.
Well, he was a younger kid, and he was, they give you that $10,000. And so he had a young family, and he was so proud, and he did a good job, and of course, then he doesn't get the win. He doesn't get the promotion. Doesn't get the money. Doesn't. I was like, oh, dude, that sucks, dude. I'm sorry.
Well, they really don't. They really don't promote you too much, anyways. Like they don't put your last name on there. They don't say your business or anything like that. I mean, it is what they sell to you. They're like, oh, it's going to be so good for your business. Like, I only had one knife order ever from that, where the guy was like, I saw you on Forge and Fire and I want to buy a knife. And he was the biggest pain in the ass customer I've ever had. Like, it was the worst thing ever. Like, I got the knife all made, you know, and like I had him choose which scales he wanted on it. And then we got done. He's like, you know, I think I did like the darker ones after all. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, man. Too late, bud.
No. Like, that's not how this works.
Oh, yeah, I know. That making knives for people, like custom orders where they have a say in the whole thing, is the biggest pain. I do not enjoy doing those. I like to make what I want to make and then put it out there and see if somebody wants to buy it. You know?
And I think that's how you do all your tools right now, right?
Yeah, pretty much, except for the knives. Even with the knives, I kind of do that too. But so I just make knives. I got and then I've got cut like the supply houses that buy most of the knives, and so I just make them in whatever handles. But they're all kind of the lefts and rights and the curves and straights, and I sell them that way. And then all the other forging tools and tongs and stuff like that, I just make my own.
So for those that don't know, where can they go to like find what tools exactly are you selling, and where could they go to find them?
So I make just about anything, but tongs and punches and fullers and hoof knives and stuff like that. And you can get them well shod.
Use code BRAINS and you'll get a free little gift in your package there.
Yeah, John's a big supporter, and then Oleo Acres. And then there's Hoof House just became, and then there's other ones too. But then you can go yukonforge.com. You can, and I get a lot of custom stuff through there. Or like, hey man, I need a pair of 3/8 tongs or 1/2-inch tongs or bolt tongs or whatever, you know.
And I thought I saw you started a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, so mostly I'm trying to. Using that to show, I want to do like tool maintenance, how to sharpen a hoof knife, you know, those types of things. So I hired a marketing guys to help me, and that was expensive and went bad. And so we started up the YouTube channel. We started up some other things, but it came way too expensive. And so I just kind of slowed down a little bit, because it became more of like, all right, we got to get to the goal and like super fast. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of enjoying the journey. So I got to pump the brakes just a little bit. So
yeah. Like, you're making this unfun, bro. you gotta chill.
Yes.
Is there a tool that you like making the most?
Gosh, I think I like making tongs. So I was always really successful in the tong making at Calgary, and consequently I ended up making a lot of tongs. And I think that's what kind of screwed me in the horseshoe making, because I spent most of my time making tongs. But I made a lot of tongs. Me and Bill was my partner at Calgary, and we made a ton of tongs. So that's probably my favorite is making tongs, because you're doing blacksmithing projects, you always need a different pair of tongs for whatever, and nothing's better than when you can make something that holds your piece and you can forge it.
It's kind of like the unsung hero on the weird projects, where like you make a weird pair of tongs for like something that you've been doing, and you're like, this is the most impressive thing about this, but nobody cares about it, like whatsoever.
Not gonna see it
or cares, right? Except for the guy making the thing, right?
It's only you that it's like, man, I know you guys think that's cool, but let me show you the tool that made it. This is the cool part. Yeah.
You're absolutely 100% right about that.
You're like, I only make those anymore just so I can use these tongs, just so I can play with these things.
I got so many different like weird pairs of tongs that you get. I mean, so if we just made this pair of tongs just to make the toe grab, or whatever.
Yes. Oh, that is my favorite part about going to pours. is looking through his crazy tong racks and stuff. Is just
Oh, yeah.
like so many weird things that you're like trying to figure out what they hold and what they could be used for. It's like,
You're like,
it's
what were
great.
you thinking with this? You know, and it's some like weird contraption of time. He's just got tons of. I'm like, I don't know if I did this another 100 years, if I have even close to his tongs that he has now. You know.
I'm bad about just making do. Like I'll just like, well, I'll just drop it 10 times each time I make it. It's like that's just what I do.
Guilty.
I just make,
I'm
you just get lazy, right? And you just make do with whatever.
Yeah, you get or you get yourself like in a bind. You're like, I just got to get done. I don't have time to make tongs right now. I got to keep working.
Yeah. Dude, and that dude always had something going on in the shop. So I don't know if we have time for a Jim Poor story.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so we were at the convention one year, and Jim's like, "Hey, I'm behind on a bunch of tools," and that's when Sam was working for him, and they were still in Midland, and they were like, "Hey, can you come down and help out for a week I just need somebody to grind on tools and stuff." I'm like, "All right, yeah, any chance to go help out Jim and check, just whatever, I'm all for it." So I ended up going home with Jim, like driving back to Texas with Jim. And then there was like a snowstorm or something going on there. But that was the time where those airsoft guns had just come out. And they had all the different types of airsoft. And that was the thing. Like everybody was sniping everybody in the shop, right? So Jim and Kathleen had this routine in the morning where Jim would get up at some ungodly hour to get the shop going, right? So he'd get up, he'd get the machines running, he'd get everything warmed up, and then he would go back to the house and get his coffee or whatever. So I think I'd been sniped multiple times, and I'm like, I'm going to get him back. So there's the one door that opens up from the house. So you kind of go down this walkway, and then you go into there. I set up one of those fully automatic airsoft guns, and I somehow rigged it up so it was connected to the power hammer. And when you open up the door, I set up a little like wedge on the door so it opened, but it wouldn't shut. And then I had a string that went all the way around to get to the BB gun. And so I had it set so once it's set, it would just shoot the entire magazine at him, So, and he'd always get up earlier than anyone else. And that night I could barely sleep because the guest room was just right next door.
It was like Christmas night.
For him to get up.
Yeah. I was just sitting there waiting. I'm like, I can't wait. So he gets up. He finally gets up. I can't remember what time. It was early. So I hear him walking along, and I hear the door open up, and I hear, God damn it, God. And it just started, I don't know how long he stood in front of the door, but you couldn't shut the door, right? If you're going to get shot, you're just going to shut the door. Well, then you're sitting there getting shot by that thing as the door is shut. But that's one of my,
that's good.
That's a good one.
Shenanigans.
They got me back a lot more than I ever got them, for sure.
Yeah.
Home field
Jim had
advantage.
it coming to him. That's great, man.
Well, John, a question we'd like to ask our guest on the show is, we call it the Mount Rushmore, and basically it's 4 people that have helped you out a lot through your career, and 4 people that you look up to and respect and hold into a high regard. So we'd like to know kind of 4 or 5 people that you have in a high regard.
So I thought about that quite a bit, because there's a lot of people that helped me along the line that were always there for me and stuff like that. And then, I know I talked about Quick and our love-hate relationship stuff, but that man has done probably more for me in my education and becoming a worshiper, so he has to be number 1. And then Jim and Kathleen, Craig, absolutely, Mark Milster, and I could just keep going. Austin was a huge help, and it always has been. And then I can't forget like Bill Poor and Todd. I know that's more than 4, but it was a village.
That's good.
So but
those people do group together pretty easily.
Right.
like real easily.
Yeah,
One more on there. Do you have one dog when you were in service that really stood out? Did you have like one favorite dog?
So, yeah, I had one dog that, I guess my first dog, he wasn't really a good, like, police dog. He was a good dope dog, but he didn't bite people very well. But he was a really good dog. We ended up retiring him, and he's home with me now. That's Cairo. And he probably, he probably kept me out of more trouble than what I got into, and he got more bad guys than probably most dogs. So quick world story before I get. We taught him how to bark into the microphone. So we would surround houses, and then we would give our canine calls, and then I would give him his cue to bark, and I'd put the microphone up to his mouth, and he would bark into it. He'd go nuts. Well, we literally had people thrown out of houses because they were afraid that the dog was coming.
Oh my god!
Get him out of here. We don't want him.
I wish we would have known. He could have barked into the microphone tonight. That would have been great.
I could probably get him to do it, but yeah, it's
good. Man, that is awesome. Kind of like his war cry. He's giving you a chance. He's blowing the horn before he went after you.
We solved more problems with that dumb dog than you can shake stick. I got more arrests. So like we probably had 200 arrests to one bite. Like people just gave up. Like, and I get it. No one wants to get eaten, right? So they're a good tool.
I don't know. Yeah, he can't be that dumb. Just because he didn't want to bite some people, like he might have been just smarter than the rest.
He's very social. He's safe around my kids, and he's a good dog. And
that is awesome.
Now. Yep.
That's awesome, man. John, we appreciate it very much for you taking time out of your busy schedule to let us crack into your brain a little bit, man. It was awesome.
No problem. I really enjoyed it. What you guys are doing is great. Just keep it up. I love the podcast. I love listening to the guys, and it's a good way to learn, but it's also a good way to stay connected. This is a community, and you guys are killing it. Keep it up.
Well, thanks, man. We appreciate it a whole lot. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, John.
This commercial and podcast is brought to you by the World Championship Blacksmiths. We're so excited to have the Trinket family support what we're doing here. It is a huge part of the topics that we have on this podcast, and it's where we've gained a lot of community at. And exactly what they are. They are a community that supports education through competition. So if you were looking for a support system behind you on your journey of becoming a better farrier, go join up and go to an event. You will never regret it. And they've been nice enough to offer us a 10% off on their online store or call-in orders for everything besides competitions and membership. So go head them up, get some merch, and let some people know what you support. Thank you, guys. Hey, everybody. I just want to take a second to tell you about Farrier Box. First of all, we owe Farrier Box a huge thank you for being one of the first ones to jump on and support what we're doing here with the podcast. If you haven't heard about Farrier Box, it's a bi-monthly box that comes to your door, and it's filled with goods. Kind of like the Chewy box to your dogs, but this one's not filled with crap. She gets advice from the top guys of the industry and puts together a box with a theme. They aren't just a bunch of random items. They always have something where like some pieces of bar stock to practice for an upcoming contest with the punch or the fuller that you can use and fits that shoe. It's a great deal. She also throws in items that you wouldn't think of, like good soaps, things to take care of yourself, make your truck smell good. Get on Farrier Box and use code BRAINS at checkout, and you're going to get 25% off your first box. Thanks, everyone. I want to take a moment to tell you guys about Wellshod. And not just that they carry every item you can think of from every brand, including from the little guys. You can get some Adam Farr punches, some Ben Sneer hammers. They pretty much got it all in the hard-to-beat $10 shipping. But I also want to take a moment to talk about John himself. You see the Wellshod name at pretty much every single contest that you go to. And not only that, you see John himself there supporting what we do and investing his time. Heck, John's even jumped in the competition in his ring himself at some of the WCB contests. That speaks huge to me, And it also speaks huge that John wanted to support what we're doing with the podcast. They've agreed that if you guys use Brains at checkout, they're going to put a little mystery item in the box for you. So go ahead and support them, what they're doing, and it helps support us. Because in all, we're all just one community.